You reach for your phone before your eyes are even fully open. One notification, one message, one headline. And just like that, before your feet have touched the floor, your whole morning has a mood you didn't choose. That tiny moment runs more of your life than you think. So today, we're going to take it apart. Not with motivation, not with quotes on a screen, with one old Stoic idea that, once it clicks, makes the noise quieter and you steadier. Stay with me to the end, because the part that actually changes things comes near the end. Look, let's start with something almost everyone gets wrong, and it's so normal you've probably never questioned it. We've been taught that peace is something you arrange, that if you can just get the right job, the right relationship, the right amount of money, the right people to finally understand you, then you'll feel calm. Then you'll relax. The plan is always the same. Control the outside, and the inside will follow. So that's what we do. We spend years trying to manage things. We try to manage what people think of us. We try to manage outcomes we won't even see for months. We replay conversations that already ended and rehearse ones that may never happen. We refresh, we check, we plan, we worry, all of it an attempt to get a grip on a world that was never going to sit still for us. And here's the strange part. The harder you grip, the worse you feel. The more you try to control everything, the more out of control your inner life becomes. You'd think effort would buy peace. It buys exhaustion. The question is the following: what if the whole strategy is backwards? What if the reason you feel so tired, so reactive, so easily knocked off balance isn't that you haven't controlled enough yet, but that you've been trying to control the wrong things this entire time? That's where the Stoics come in. And I want to be clear up front. This isn't going to be a video about thinking positive or pretending everything's fine. The Stoics were not soft people. A lot of them lived through exile, illness, war, the loss of children, public humiliation. They weren't writing from a comfortable life. They were writing from inside the storm. And what they figured out is something you can use tomorrow morning before you even pick up that phone. Here's what almost nobody notices. There's a line you can draw through everything that happens to you. On one side of that line are the things that are genuinely up to you. On the other side are the things that aren't. Sounds simple, almost too simple. But sit with it for a second, because most people have never actually sorted their lives this way. What's truly up to you? A short list. Your choices. Your effort. How you respond. What you give your attention to. The kind of person you decide to be when things go wrong. That's basically it. And what's not up to you? Almost everything else. The weather, traffic, the economy, what your boss decides, whether someone likes you, whether you get the promotion, what people say behind your back, the past, every bit of it, the future mostly, other people's moods, choices, opinions, and reactions. Now here's the thing the Stoics built their entire philosophy on. They said, nearly all of your suffering comes from getting these two columns mixed up, from pouring your energy into the second column, the stuff you can't control, and neglecting the first. Think about how much of your stress is about column 2. You're anxious about an outcome you can't guarantee. You're angry about something someone already did and can't take back. You're hurt about an opinion you have no power to change. You're afraid of a future that hasn't even decided what it's going to be yet. This idea has a name. It's called the dichotomy of control, and it comes from a Stoic named Epictetus, a man who, by the way, was born a slave. He had less control over his own circumstances than almost anyone listening to this. And out of that life, he arrived at something close to freedom. Not freedom from hardship, freedom inside it. Centuries later, a Roman emperor named Marcus Aurelius, a man with as much external power as a human being could have, was writing the same idea to himself, late at night, just to stay sane. A slave and an emperor, opposite ends of the world, landing on the exact same truth. That should tell you something. This isn't about your situation, it's about where you aim your energy. And this is where it gets practical. Let's talk about what this actually does to your nervous system, because this isn't just philosophy, it's psychology, and the Stoics were 2,000 years ahead of us on it. Take anxiety, strip it down, and what is it really? It's your mind sprinting around a future you cannot control, trying to nail down outcomes that haven't happened. You run the worst-case scenario again and again, as if rehearsing the disaster will somehow protect you from it. But it never does. You just get to suffer the thing twice, once in your imagination and maybe once in reality. Anxiety is column 2, living rent-free in your head. Or take anger. Anger is almost always a demand that reality be different than it is. Someone cut you off in traffic, and underneath the heat is a quiet insistence. They should not have done that, but they did. It already happened. The thing your anger is fighting is over. You're not fighting the event anymore. You're fighting the fact that the event occurred. And that's a fight you lose every single time, because the past doesn't negotiate. Then there's the big one, the need for approval. So many of us are quietly exhausted from trying to manage what other people think of us. We perform, we soften ourselves, we say yes when we mean no. We check how the message landed, and it never ends. Because another person's opinion lives entirely in their head, column 2 completely outside your reach. You can be the most decent, honest, hard-working person alive, and someone will still misread you. The Stoics would say, of course they will. That was never yours to control. Now let me give you a picture for this, because it makes it stick. Think of your emotions like waves on the ocean. You don't get to decide whether a wave shows up. A wave of fear, a wave of anger, a wave of grief. They rise on their own. That part isn't up to you, but you are not the wave. You're the ocean. The wave moves across the surface, and underneath the water is still. The mistake we make is thinking we are the wave, that we have to be carried wherever it goes. The Stoics are teaching you to drop back down into the deep water, where the storm is happening on the surface, but it isn't dragging all of you with it. Or try this one. Think of your mind like a garden. You can't control the weather. The storms roll through whether you like it or not, but you decide what you plant. You decide what you water. You decide which thoughts you let take root and grow, and which ones you pull out before they spread. A neglected mind grows weeds by default. A tended one grows something you'd actually want to live in. Let's talk about overthinking for a second, because this is where most of us actually live, isn't it? Not in some dramatic crisis. In the low, constant hum of a mind that won't shut off. You lie down at night, and your brain decides now is the time to review every awkward thing you've ever said. You're in the shower, and you're prosecuting an argument with someone who isn't even there. You make a simple decision and then spend 3 hours wondering if it was the wrong one. Here's what the Stoics would point out about all that mental noise. Almost every loop of overthinking is your mind trying to control something it can't. You're trying to think your way to certainty about the future. But the future doesn't hand out certainty, no matter how many laps you run around it. You're trying to think your way to a perfect decision. But perfect doesn't exist, so the search never ends. Overthinking feels productive. It feels like you're working on the problem. But mostly you're just paying interest on a debt that isn't real, and the way out isn't to think harder or to force the thoughts to stop. You can't bully your mind into silence. The way out is the same question we keep coming back to. Is this in my control? If there's an action you can take, take it. Action is the off switch that worrying never will be. And if there's no action, if it's just your mind grinding on something already decided or already gone, then you recognize it for what it is. Not wisdom, not preparation, just a wave passing over the surface. You don't have to ride everyone. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Right about here, a part of you is probably pushing back. Maybe you're thinking, okay, but this sounds cold. This sounds like I'm supposed to just not care, stop reacting, accept everything, feel nothing. That's not strength, that's just shutting down. I want to take that seriously, because it's the most common misunderstanding there is about this philosophy, and it's worth getting right. The Stoics were not telling you to stop caring. They cared deeply about justice, about their families, about doing the right thing, about the people around them. Marcus Aurelius ran an empire and grieved his children. These were not detached, hollow men. What they were after wasn't the absence of feeling. It was the absence of being ruled by feeling. There's a world of difference. Feeling angry and being controlled by your anger are not the same thing. Feeling afraid and letting fear make your decisions are not the same thing. The goal isn't to become a stone. It's to stop being a leaf, blown in whatever direction the wind happens to be going that day. And here's the part that flips the whole objection on its head. This isn't passive at all. It's the opposite. When you stop spending your energy on the things you can't control, you finally have energy left for the things you can. You stop wasting yourself on other people's opinions, and you put that fuel into your own work. You stop arguing with the past, and you start building the next thing. Letting go of column 2 isn't giving up. It's where your real power finally gets concentrated. Let me tell you about something that happened. I want to tell you about a man. Could be anyone. Maybe it's someone you know. Maybe in some season of your life it was you. He gets called into an office, doesn't see it coming. And in about 4 minutes, the job he gave 11 years of his life to is gone. Restructuring, they say. Nothing personal, they say. He walks out into the parking lot holding a cardboard box with a coffee mug and a phone charger in it. And he feels the floor of his whole identity drop out from under him. For the first few weeks, he lived entirely in column 2. He replayed the meeting 100 times, what he should have said, who he should blame. He stewed over how unfair it was. And he was right, it was unfair. He stalked the company online to see how they were doing without him. He let the anger and the shame run the show. And all of it, every bit of that energy, went into things he could not change. The decision was made. The past was the past. Their opinion of him was theirs. He was pouring himself into a sealed door and wondering why he felt so empty. And then somewhere in there, something shifted. He started asking a different question. Not why did this happen to me? Because that question has no useful answer and just keeps you bleeding. He started asking, what's actually mine to work with here? And the list, it turned out, wasn't nothing. His attitude was his. How he spent tomorrow morning was his. Whether he picked up a skill he'd been putting off, that was his. How he treated his family while he was hurting, his. The next email he sent, the next call he made, the kind of man he was going to be in the middle of this mess, all of it, his. Nothing about his circumstances changed overnight. The job didn't come back, but the weight changed because he stopped carrying the part that was never his to carry. He stopped trying to win an argument with a thing that had already happened. And slowly, the version of him that showed up to the next chapter was steadier, sharper, and frankly harder to knock down than the one who walked out of that office. That's the whole thing, right there. The event didn't break him. For a while, his reaction to the event broke him, and the moment he understood the difference, he started to come back. Here's where it goes deeper. There's a line from Marcus Aurelius that I think about constantly. He basically said that you have power over your mind, not over outside events, and once you realize that, you'll find your strength. Sit with the first half of that, not over outside events. He's an emperor saying this. He could order armies, he could shape the fate of millions, and even he is reminding himself in his private journal that the events themselves were never the thing he controlled. But there's an even sharper idea buried in here, and it's the one I really want you to walk away with. The Stoics noticed that it is almost never the event itself that wrecks us. It's the story we attach to the event, the meaning we give it. Think about it. Two people lose the same job. One spirals for a year, the other treats it as the push they needed and builds something better. Same event, completely different outcome. The difference wasn't what happened to them. The difference was the judgment they laid on top of what happened. The problem is never just what happens to you, it's the meaning you give it. Someone doesn't text you back. The event is neutral, a phone, silent, but your mind rushes in with a story. They're done with me, I did something wrong, I'm not worth responding to. And you suffer all afternoon, not because of the silence, but because of the story you wrapped around it. The silence didn't hurt you, the interpretation did. This is genuinely good news, even though it doesn't always feel like it at first, because if your pain were caused purely by events, you'd be helpless. You can't always change events. But if a huge chunk of your suffering is coming from the meaning you assign, then you've got a door. You've got a place where you actually have a say. You can't always pick the event. You can learn to question the story. And yes, some things you just have to accept. Now there's a piece of this that's harder, and I won't pretend it isn't. The Stoics talked about amor fati, a love of fate, not just tolerating what happens, not gritting your teeth through it, actually meeting your life as it is, instead of constantly wishing it was some other way. This sounds impossible at first, and I get it. How are you supposed to love the hard things? The losses, the setbacks, the stuff that genuinely hurts? Here's the way in. Think about pain like training. Nobody walks into a gym and gets angry that the weights are heavy. The heaviness is the entire point. The resistance is what makes you stronger. You don't grow in spite of the load. You grow because of it. Seneca said something close to this. He said, no one really knows what they're capable of until they've been tested, and that the things we run from are often the very things that would have made us. So when something hard lands on you, the Stoics would ask, what is this here to build? Not in a fake, cheerful way, in a serious way. This frustration, is it teaching you patience? This rejection, is it pointing you somewhere better? This loss, is it showing you what actually matters and what was just noise? You don't have to be glad it happened, but you can refuse to waste it. There's a difference between I'm so happy I went through that and I'm not going to let that go to waste. The second one, that's available to you no matter what life throws. And I want to say this carefully, because it matters. None of this means you white-knuckle through everything alone. If what you're carrying is heavy in a way that's been pulling you under for a long time, the kind of weight that makes ordinary days feel impossible, the strong move, the genuinely stoic move, is to reach for real support. A doctor, a therapist, someone you trust. Philosophy is a tool for living. It works alongside help. It was never meant to be a wall you hide behind. So what do you actually do with this? Let me bring it all the way down to the ground, because ideas that stay in the sky don't change anyone's life. Tomorrow morning, when something pulls at you, a message, a worry, a flash of anger, try one question before you react, just one. Is this up to me? If it is, then act. Do the thing. Put your energy in. That's exactly where it belongs. If it isn't, then you've found the edge of your control, and that's where you set it down. Not because you don't care, because caring about it won't move it an inch, and all it'll do is cost you the peace you actually need to handle the parts that are yours. That single question, asked over and over, slowly rewires how you move through your day. You stop bleeding energy into sealed doors. You stop arguing with the past. You stop trying to manage the inside of other people's heads. And what you get back, that's not a small thing. That's the quiet underneath the waves. That's the still water that was there the whole time. The Stoics weren't promising you a life without storms. Storms are coming for all of us. They were promising you something better than a life without storms. They were promising you a self that doesn't get swept away by them. And here's what almost nobody realizes until they've lived it. the calm you've been chasing out there, in the next achievement, the next bit of approval, the next thing falling into place. It was never out there. It was always going to come from one place. From learning, finally, to let go of what was never yours to hold, and to pour everything you've got into what is. That's where the strength is. That's where the peace is. Not in controlling the world, in mastering the small, quiet kingdom that's actually yours. So before you go, sit with this for a second. Be honest with yourself. How much of what's stealing your peace right now is something you can actually control? And how much of it have you been carrying for no reason at all, replaying it, fighting it, gripping it, when the wisest thing you could do is just open your hand? I want to hear it. What's the one thing that's been taking the most peace from you lately? Put it in the comments. Naming it out loud is sometimes the first real step to setting it down. And read a few of the others while you're there, because you're not the only one carrying something. If this gave you even one quieter breath today, subscribe and stay with this channel, because we're not here for motivation that fades by lunch. We're here to build the kind of inner strength that holds when everything around you doesn't. Take care of yourself, and remember, you don't have to control the storm. You just have to stop letting it convince you it's stronger than the part of you that's been weathering storms your whole life. I'll see you in the next one.